yeah, I had the only real hiccup in the beginning, besides like the mild cramping, which did end up going away pretty quickly once I was feeling properly. But had a bathroom break around like mile 10. And I only bring this up because if you're volunteering in a race, don't get in the bathroom before the racers, because that set me back like 5 minutes. Somebody that was a volunteer that wasn't even racing like happened to use the porta potty that was there in front of me, and that was really frustrating because I was just standing in line like, come on, hurry up! I'm wasting so much time.
Dang, that
Um,
stinks. That's quite a while.
so yeah, it was a long time. So that was like, it wasn't just frustrating because it was a volunteer. It also, I got really cold, and it's really hard
Yep.
at like mile 10, 11 to stop and then start again. It just, I felt like I was like I had ran a lot more miles than I had ran because I had stopped, everything cooled down, and then I was really slow to get back going. So from like 10 to 13, I was just struggling a bit, from slowing down and coming to a complete stop. And then 13, I feel like a lot of people can relate to seeing the half marathoners go off and finish
Oh,
their race. And then you
dang.
realize, and it sets in that you're only halfway there. So that was mentally hard. That was probably the hardest mental challenge. Everything else up until then was all physical. But once I saw the half marathoners split off from me, I was like, oh, okay.
Dang.
This is a thing that I'm doing here.
This is your host, Brendan, and you're listening to the Ordinary to Ultra podcast. This podcast is all about helping you run your first ultramarathon and beyond. Tune in to hear new and experienced ultra runners share how they got into running in the first place, what inspired them to run an ultra, training and race day tips, and the gripping story of their first ultramarathon. Prepare yourself to be inspired as you hear stories of grit, sometimes failure, but ultimately triumph when our guests finally cross the finish line.
Hey everybody, and hey Taylor, thanks so much for joining me today on the Ordinary to Ultra podcast. I'm super excited to have you here, and this episode is going to be a little special. Taylor ran her first marathon somewhat recently, and she actually has her own podcast called My First Marathon. So the goal today really is to have her tell us her story of her first marathon, since I know a lot of y'all will be doing a marathon before your first ultra, which is awesome. It's a fantastic step before going to a 50K or a 50 miler. But yeah, so we've got Taylor here to tell us her story of her first marathon, how she got there. Super excited to have you here.
Yeah, super excited to be on. Thanks for having me.
For sure. This is sweet. So, Taylor, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, like how old you are, where you live, what you do for work, um, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I am 26. I currently am living in North Carolina, kind of in the Raleigh area. It's a big tech hub in Raleigh, so I work for a tech company out here, on the sales team. So not with the smart people, unfortunately, but we sell the smart people stuff. So on the sales team in tech, and yeah, and I ran my first marathon pretty recently, so I've just been doing a lot of running since I've been out here.
You said you've been in, sorry, Raleigh. That's how you say
Hmm.
it, Raleigh? Okay.
Raleigh, yep,
And that's North Carolina or South?
North Carolina.
Yeah, North. Okay. I always get them mixed up. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you said you do sales. That's cool. I do marketing, so not too
Oh,
far
sweet.
off. And I
Pretty
also work for
close.
tech companies. So yeah, I mean, like we just got
Cool.
a different vibe. We don't
For
need to be the
sure.
coders. What company do you work for?
So I work for a company called Veronis.
Veronis. Cool. Solid. Okay. Do you work remote or do you go into the office?
So I used to work remote. I manage a team now, so a little easier to be in person with them.
Uh,
So we're in person for 5 days a week now.
nice. Okay,
Yeah.
that's cool too. So before we get into like your running history, just a question about like your lifestyle and running. So I'm just
Sure.
curious, when you fit in like your training runs, do you like do your training runs in the morning? Do you go in the afternoon? When do you usually fit those in?
It kind of changes throughout the year, honestly. Anybody that lives near North Carolina or near this area knows it's like the summers are brutal, and you really have to prioritize getting your runs in the morning. So this time of year, yeah, I'm usually up, around 4, walking the dog, and then getting my run in after, or going to the gym or something like that before the day starts. Like I said, I
Yeah.
work in office 5 days a week, so I'm a little limited on what I can do during the day. So
Uh-huh.
that's what I do this time of year. In the winter, especially when I was kind of in the heat of marathon training, a lot of what I did was at night. I really liked the like headlamp runs, found it really peaceful. The weather was always a little bit better at night than it was freezing cold in the mornings out here. So yeah, it depends on the time of year, but usually in the mornings.
What temperature is it at night versus the morning when you're running?
In the summer.
Sorry, no, in the winter when you're like doing
Oh,
your
in the
night
winter.
runs.
Yeah, in the morning in the winter, it can get pretty chilly. It can get down to like the teens sometimes.
Okay.
Which I'm from the West Coast, so that doesn't bother me too much. Like I grew up around a lot of snow and things like that, so it's not too
Yeah.
bad. But it's probably in the 30s or 40s by the afternoon, so a little bit
Yeah.
more manageable.
Totally. Yep. I do when it's the winter, I hate that I have to switch my routine because it like throws everything off a little bit, but
Yeah,
I
I agree.
do I do lunch runs during the winter because it's like 30 degrees instead of also like 15. It's like 15 degrees
Yeah,
in Hiram, Utah. Um, in the morning, it's like, no, my face is like freezing off. Even if
yeah,
I have to wear like ski goggles and like a mask if I go out running at 15 degrees sometimes. Yeah, more comfortable in the afternoon for
totally.
sure. So, okay, what does your running history look like? And like when did you start running originally, and why? Why did you do it? Why did you start?
Yeah, so I'll take it back a little bit, but my actual running journey that kind of led to the marathon was a little bit more recent. But I started
Okay,
running in college.
okay,
So I was signed up for my first 10K. It was my family; they're big San Francisco Giants fans. Like I said, I'm from the West Coast, so
mm-hmm.
we wanted to run it's called the Giant Race. It's where it's a 10K or a half marathon. It finishes on the field. It's really cool, all like San Francisco branded. You get to run through the city, which is pretty cool. So
Cool,
originally, yeah, I started running just training for that 10K.
yeah,
And when I was looking through kind of my stats before coming on here, I just wanted to refresh myself on what that was even like, what I even trained for back then, because I didn't know anything about running, and it was a
yeah,
lot of just full speed, like 2 to 3 to 4 miles, whenever I could fit it in, because I was in college, just no strategy whatsoever. So it's no surprise that after I ran that 10K, I didn't run for like 5 more years, because I just beat the hell out of my body for, a few months, and then ran this 10K, and then just was like, that was not a great experience for me. So that's
yeah,
where it started. And
uh-huh,
then I moved from the West Coast, so from Oregon to North Carolina 2 years ago. And that move it was honestly just kind of hard on me emotionally. Like I was moving away from my family. I was moving to an area where I didn't really know anybody. Like my boyfriend's family is all out here, but otherwise I was completely by myself. So I was
got
just
it.
out of a lack for goals, I guess is the best way to put it. I've always been like a team sport athlete, I like to have something that I'm working on. I didn't have that for a long time. So I was like, what are some things that I can get into to like meet people, and have something to shoot for. Um, First thing I tried was rock climbing. I joined a rock climbing gym out here. That was fun for a little bit. It didn't really stick. It was kind of expensive, like going to the gym. It was just a little bit more of a process. So
Uh,
running was just like I could throw my shoes on and go do it. So that's kind of how I got into running more recently.
yeah, and that was how long ago, do you
So
think?
that was probably a year and a half to 2 years ago. Yeah.
Cool. Rock climbing though, so and you were going to a rock climbing gym. You weren't like
Yeah.
going outside, very much just like, yeah, a gym. Were you
Yep.
bouldering or like clip in rock climbing?
I did a little bit of both. I honestly,
Yeah.
after a while, I mostly like the rock climbing gyms out here. They're all big facilities with gyms, so there was like weightlifting classes and yoga and stuff like that. So I rock climbed
Yeah.
a decent amount, but I was mostly into the fitness stuff.
The gym.
Yeah.
That's cool. Is there even good rock climbing in that area, North Carolina? I have no idea what it looks like over there. Yeah.
Hit and miss. Yeah, I have
Yeah.
my
Okay.
boyfriend's sister. She rock climbs outside more than me. I've only done it once, but there's a couple
Yeah.
areas that are pretty popular, but it's nothing like I'm sure Utah or Colorado or Oregon, Washington. That's got to be the best, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. The mountains, maybe. I
Yeah,
mean, in North Carolina, what mountains cross through? Don't you have some Appalachians running through there? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Appalachian, Blue Ridge Mountains are out west. There's some smaller
Ridge.
kind of snowboarding hills, but they're
Yeah.
they're not anything crazy.
East Coast skiing. I get it.
Yeah,
Cool. Okay. So about 2 years ago, you tried out rock climbing, and then you were also sort of dipping your toes into running, and you were like, wow, this is convenient. Being
yeah.
able to just flop on the shoes and get out. Um, nice. So did you start running out of the fitness aspect? Like, I want to do this to like keep fit, or was it like I need to get outside, or like what was the reason, do you think?
I think it was a mix of a few things. It was, like I said, I was like really looking for something, just some goals to shoot for.
The goals.
Wanted something to put on the calendar and work towards. Rock climbing wasn't really giving me that. That's not anything that you can really compete in. It's just your own accountability to go. So I was looking for something like that. I was also just like I said, I was a team sport athlete all through high school and a little bit in college. So I just was the most probably out of shape I had been in a really long time. So it was like, yeah,
Yeah.
the fitness aspect I knew would be a nice bonus as part of that.
Yeah. Um, okay. First off, which team sports did you play back then?
Yeah, mostly softball. Softball was the sport that I took
Softball.
through college, but I played
Cool.
basketball as well.
Awesome. Okay, so you've done some other sports too. That's
Yeah.
sick. Okay, and you mentioned this goal. You wanted some goals. So like when you threw on your tennis shoes and started running, had you signed up for something before you even started running, or did you start running and then you were like, I should sign up for something to have a goal, or what did that look like?
Originally, I was a little intimidated, to be honest, by the race world. I remembered my last experience in college, and it was a pretty big race for my first experience. So I was just a little intimidated, and my pace was nowhere near what it was when I was in college. And so at first, I was just I committed to I'm just gonna put shoes on, and I'm gonna run or walk for some distance twice a week. That was all I committed to for
Nice.
probably a month, maybe 2 months. Because I knew I just needed to build some sort of base. First time I tried to run a mile, it humbled me very quickly. so,
Right? Isn't that
so
crazy?
it's so crazy. Yeah. So it just was important to get kind of time on my feet at first. And then once I felt like, okay, I can run a mile, and then I was running 2 miles, and then I ran three. It's like, okay, maybe I can put my first or my second 10K on the board since I was already familiar with that race.
Okay. Can I ask too, in these earlier months before you even signed up for the 10K,
Yeah.
um, had you grabbed any running shoes at that point? Like specific, these are running shoes, like, Hoka's or Saucony's or like real deal, or were you just running in like the tennis shoes you had before?
Pretty much the tennis shoes I
Yeah?
had, yeah. Was
Sick.
not ready, like mentally ready to commit financially to anything at that point. I was just wanted the
Yeah.
convenience and to grab what I had and like just see it out. But I quickly realized, and I talk about this on my podcast quite a bit, like I encourage people to invest in shoes much earlier than you think you deserve to in the beginning. Cause as soon as I invested in something, like my knees felt better, my calves felt better, everything felt significantly better. So that's
Sick.
something if I could go back, I would change for sure.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going with that. I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
well, like your young running self, like were they suffering in those
Yeah,
first few miles because I was, and then when I got the running shoes, it changed immediately. It was like, oh
totally.
my gosh, I can run another 2 miles and no pain. Like this is
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
what's
real.
funny too in the beginning is like I said, you don't feel like you deserve it, but I think you almost need it more in the beginning because your form's not quite there. You're probably a little hunched over. You're putting a lot of strain on your body that you haven't been putting. So it's probably even more important in the beginning is the irony of it all.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Cool. So you signed up for a 10K,
Yeah.
first race since that first 10K that you did. Um, Sick. And when was this 10K? When did it happen?
The second one would have been in early 2023. So like
Okay,
March time. Yeah.
early. Sick. Okay, and what did your training look like for this 10K? Just what miles were you putting in? How often are you running?
Yeah, I think I did what everybody does and just Googled couch to 10K plan, found
Yeah,
something online. I think I found it from like Pinterest or something like that. It was just a picture of how to build up mileage pretty slowly. So I gave myself a good amount of time. I probably gave myself 2 months or so ish to train for that first 10K from like 0 to 10K. And yeah, it was just the plan was one or two like base runs during the week and then a long quote unquote long run on the weekend until you built up to I think the longest I ran before that was 5 miles.
yeah. Sick. Okay. Like 3 runs a week. Nice. And okay, how did your 10K go when 10K day happened? Um, I won't spend too much time here because we got to get to your marathon, but how
Yeah.
did the race go? You know?
Yeah, I think that it went as good as it could have. I was still, not I didn't have as great of a base, but I think that race more proved to me that I could still I still had the fitness to put mileage on my body if I just stuck to something and was consistent with it. Because I signed up for my half marathon pretty much the next day after that 10K. So it just kind of proved to myself like this is cool. I like this feeling. I like getting the medal and the experience, and it happened pretty quickly. So I want to keep moving this through.
Sick, moving it forward. So I'm curious if you ever considered like being the short distance person. Did you ever consider, man, maybe I should just do another 10K and like just get faster, or like I should get really good at the 5K or something, or or immediately you just knew I need to do a half marathon. I need to go farther. Like, what was that
Yeah.
like?
I don't even know if I gave that any thought, honestly. I was just
Yeah,
on the train of I want to keep improving, and I think to me the only way I knew to improve back then was to keep increasing distance. So I don't even
yeah,
know if speed was something that I knew people worked on at that time, to be honest. It was
yeah,
just like
yeah,
I this is what I've been building distance, so I'm just going to keep doing this. This seems to feel good. It feels like I'm moving in a direction, if that makes sense.
yeah. That's sick. I mean, same. But I
Yeah,
know there's short distance people out there, so I wonder like
totally.
who are those people and what goes through their heads. But I guess I wouldn't have many of them on this podcast probably, since we definitely go long distance here.
Sure.
Um, Sick. So half marathon, and when did your half marathon happen?
So that was probably I gave myself a good amount of time for that one too. So that one was that one was in July of that year. So the half or I mean
Okay,
sorry, the 10K would have been in May-ish and then the half was in July. End of
okay.
July.
So you had like 2 or 3 months to
I
prep
think it
for
was a
that,
little
and
under
you
3.
already,
Yeah.
yeah, and you already like built up with this 10K, so you just like continued the training forward, right? So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, what changes in your training happened for that?
Honestly, not much. If I could go back, I would change a billion things, which I'm sure we'll get into. But
Okay,
looked up another plan similar to the first one, and I just started it from the 6 mile mark forward. So yeah, I think it shook out to a little over 2 months of training, and then I threw in a couple extra weeks in there just to make the race that I picked fit into the plan.
yeah, and I imagine your long runs got a little longer.
Yes, yeah. That was the biggest hurdle in the beginning. When going to half marathon distance, like looking back on the whole thing, marathon or half marathon to marathon was definitely more extreme, but at the time I was feeling like I was putting a lot of miles on my body that I just wasn't used to. It's like from 0 to, running 10 miles in like 3 months, 4 months. It was a quick turnaround.
You're right, that is a relatively short amount of time. And you mentioned, if you could have gone back, do you want to even touch on what you would have done differently training for this half marathon, or
Sure.
even back to the 10K? Like, would you have given yourself more run time? What would you change?
Yeah, I actually it's something I'm passionate about talking to like newer runners about now, because I feel like that first 3-4 months is really important in like injury prevention and making sure that you are like taking your time with it and actually falling in love with the sport, not rushing to an end goal too quickly. So for me, yeah, if I could go back, I would love to say I'd incorporate more strength training, but I think everybody says that. I think that's a little unrealistic in the beginning. You got to commit to the running first. So the strength training would have been nice, but I would have just given myself more time to train. I would have done a lot more walking in the beginning. I would have done a lot more slower runs. Like just really took my time building that base so that when I got to the 8, 9, 10, 11 mile mark, I wasn't so like run is done, I'm dead on the couch for the rest of the day. I would have given myself a lot more time.
Yeah. Okay. Good feedback. Yeah, everyone listen in. That's some good. Those are some good tips. I agree. Um, Personally, I did give myself a lot of runway, but that was because I wasn't immediately into racing. Like I just like naturally for me, it was like I just started running to get outside and get fitter, and the racing came later. So I think I
Mm,
probably had like 6 months of running without goals, really, except for, I mean, without race goals. So I guess that
yeah,
just,
that's great.
yeah, it just happened that way for me. But that's great feedback, though. Thanks, Taylor. Um, okay, half marathon comes up. How briefly did the half marathon go?
Yeah, it went well. I picked one that was going to be beautiful. So it was like, it
Hmm,
wasn't a trail run. It was pretty packed, but it was through this national forest out in North Carolina. It was beautiful. So I just tried to enjoy myself. I had no pace goals, nothing. It was just,
yeah,
I want to finish the race today.
finish.
So
Sick.
nothing too crazy happened, which I'll take that for a first experience. Just yeah, it took my time, and after I was done, I wasn't immediately thinking let me sign up for a marathon, but I was thinking, wow, like 4 months ago I didn't think I could do something like this, and I just did that. So I wonder what else could come from this. It was definitely like solidified that I was really liking
And confidence wise, did that raise your confidence a lot too? You're like, wow, I went from a 10K to a half marathon. Like, holy cow, that's a long ways. Did you
Yeah,
feel that confidence building in yourself?
it was huge. Yeah. Like I said in the beginning, I was really lacking goals. I was in kind of an awkward transitional spot in my life. So it gave me something that I could control through training, and then also something that I like could check off the accomplishment list. So yeah, after I finished that half marathon, I was like on top of the world. Like I could do anything.
That's awesome. And you mentioned it was on the road running through a national forest.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's sweet. That's pretty. I love that.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a proponent for picking races that are pretty. So you're not, I mean, I am obviously a trail runner, so maybe I'm biased, but even in road running, you can pick pretty places to run. Um,
Totally. Helps a lot.
yeah, yeah. When there's nice stuff to look at and not just an endless road, sometimes that can be hard.
For sure.
Cool. So half marathon happens in July, and it does sound like there was a decent gap between your half marathon and your marathon, from what I
Yes.
remember you saying. But how long did it take you to like what were your thoughts as you led up to signing up for your first marathon? Curious.
Yeah. So directly after, I didn't sign up for anything right away, but I was kind of like,
Okay.
let's just see how far I can take this distance thing. Like, let's just go out and try to run 14 miles. And I was also being
Okay.
cognizant of like for not signing up for something that I was leaving the country for a couple of weeks shortly after that
Mm,
first half marathon. So I was like, kind of don't want to start another training block right now because I'm not sure how much I'm going to be able to commit while I'm actually traveling. And like marathon season usually is in November. That's when the New York Marathon happens. The Chicago Marathon's later in the year. So July was like when I needed to start actually taking it serious. And I had my half marathon at the end of July. So I was like, kind of thinking anything in November, October, I'm probably not going to be ready for. So
Yeah.
I tried to run 14 miles. That was probably my first setback. This was before I traveled and left the country
Okay.
because I couldn't do it. It was really, it was probably 2 weeks after my first half marathon. I got 10
Uh-huh.
miles into it. It was too hot. I was not prepared, didn't feel fuel, didn't take enough water, and I just completely hit the wall for the first time in training at
The
all.
wall.
I know. So that was a huge knock on my confidence. Like half
Mm,
marathon day, top of the world, tried to run
yeah.
14 miles 2 weeks later, completely was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I know nothing about this. I clearly don't know how to prepare for running in this type of heat now that we're in the middle of summer. I'm just going to go travel for 2 weeks and I'm going to come back and just kind of reevaluate what I want to do here. So pretty much took those 2 weeks completely off. No running, nothing. We worked out a little bit. We did a lot of walking, but that was about it. So when I came back, I was like just going on short runs and just like I said, just kind of like reevaluating what I wanted to do with the base that I had built. So I ended up signing up for a second half marathon at that point and decided I was going to train for that half marathon, which was in November. And that's what I dedicated the rest of the year to. I think I signed up for the marathon that was in February, somewhere in the middle of that. So between
Before the half marathon.
before, yeah. Once I was
Okay.
hitting, once I had tried the 14-mile distance again and did it,
Yeah.
and it felt
Yeah.
good, then I was
Uh-huh.
like, okay, let's keep trying to creep this up. And I knew I wouldn't take it serious unless I had a marathon on the calendar. So that's kind of what pushed me to put something on the calendar.
Nice. Nice. It's smart too having that like that half marathon in the middle of training towards the marathon too. Just to have something to
Yeah,
keep you going. Um, that can be the hard thing sometimes, is keeping the training going when something is so far out. So
totally. Yeah. I actually ended up doing
uh,
two in between the first half and
oh,
the marathon.
what?
So it just anytime I
Two
had
halves?
a 13-mile like training run on my calendar, I'd go online and see if there was something local that I could run, and it just happened that two of them lined up pretty perfectly. So yeah, worked
Oh,
out.
okay. That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, I'm just curious too, where did you travel to?
So we went to South America last year. We were in Argentina for a couple of weeks. It was beautiful. Like 10 out of 10. Recommend going to South America because it was amazing.
Taylor, did you go to Patagonia? No.
We didn't.
Yeah.
No, we didn't make it. We didn't make it that far, but we were in like Buenos Aires. We went to Guazú
Okay.
Falls, if anyone knows where that is. It's like one of the
No, you
wonders of the
did?
world.
You went
So
to
beautiful.
Iguazu?
We did. Beautiful.
Oh,
Like the
okay,
most
yeah.
unreal thing I've ever seen. It was crazy.
Really? I don't doubt it. Everyone, if you're a travel person, you need to look up Iguazu Falls,
Yeah,
Argentina. It's like
very
Niagara
cool.
Falls times 10 in a jungle. So it's like way
Yes.
cooler, and I haven't seen it, but I really need to see it. So
Yeah, it's amazing.
it's awesome. That's sick. Okay. Thank you for that side note. That's awesome. I mean,
For sure.
yeah, did you do any hiking around there? Or it sounds like you were just kind of like traveling around and I don't know.
Yeah,
What'd you
we did
do?
in Iguazu. We did a little bit of hiking. You kind of have to. Most of it
Yeah,
is kind of walking to the different falls. But no, we
cool.
didn't do a ton. We just kind of enjoyed
Yeah,
ourselves. Just popped around the country and saw as much as we
yeah.
could.
And the towns and cities and such.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. Well, that's sweet. Yeah, I love South America. I spent a lot of time in Peru.
Oh, awesome.
Um, yeah, about 4 months in Peru, and man, yeah, if you're
We're
into
actually going
hiking
to
and
Peru.
stuff, what? You
We're
are?
going to Peru next month. Sorry to cut you off.
Oh,
Yeah.
seriously? Where are you
So I'll
going?
have to connect with you and see if you got any tips. But we only have
Yes.
about a week and a half, so we're gonna do
Okay.
Machu Picchu, fly into Lima and then go hike Machu Picchu. Really excited for
Well, I
that.
mean, are you gonna do a trek to Machu Picchu?
Yes,
Yeah,
we're gonna work with a tour company since we're so limited
yeah,
on time. We didn't want to kind of
yeah,
leave it to our own devices, so we're
definitely.
gonna go with a group and yeah, go see as much as we can.
Okay, so I'm gonna continue on this side
I know
note for a
I'm
second.
distracting us.
Is it no, this was my fault. How long is the trek to Machu Picchu? Like, how long is that hiking thing gonna be?
So we wanted originally to do the 4-day hike. So you see, there's different
Okay,
circuits, right? So
yeah, there
circuit
are.
1 and 2 are like the most like time constraining and where you really want to be with a guide. I think we decided that was going to be too much for the time that we have, so we're going to do
Got
3 and
it.
4, which is a
Mm,
2-day hike. So I think it's like 8 hours the first day and like 6 the second day, something like that. So not too crazy.
yeah. Oh, that's so awesome though. I
Yeah.
I wish I'd been aware of the treks when I went. We actually took a bus to almost there, and then we walked along a train track to Aguascalientes, and then we went up and we hiked up the mountain to Machu Picchu, which is really just a crazy staircase that
Yeah.
destroys your thighs. But it was awesome. That is going to be amazing. It is a magical experience. It's going to be like Iguazu. It'll blow
Awesome.
your mind.
Can't wait.
Cool. Okay, we'll take the rest of that offline. Adventures. Let's go.
Yes.
Everyone listening to this, you're probably hikers and trail runners. So anyway, if you can ever get to South America and do some of that stuff in Machu Picchu or the Andes or also in Peru, like
Yes.
fantastic hiking out there. Um, cool. So you did some half marathons in between your marathon. Your marathon is in February. Um, what kind of miles were you putting in, like in peak training? Like what kind of miles a week were you putting in? How many days a week were you running? How long was your longest long run? Some training stats.
Yeah, I kept the routine pretty similar, honestly, for the first half marathon. I was a little bit more involved with the social media running community now, so I had a lot more people giving me feedback, which was super helpful. To the second time around on like what training plans I should follow. So I started the Run with Hal app at that point, and that
Nice.
gave me a little bit more of a structure to training than I had before. Um, I think I was running still 3 days a week, but I had a day of cross training in there. Once I had signed up for the marathon, and was
Cool.
following that plan. So pretty similar. I just had a longer runs, obviously, during the weekend on the weekend, and then a little bit more cross training.
Well, yeah, and your midweek runs are probably getting pretty long now too, right? Like, they
Yes.
started out like 3 miles, but now they're probably getting to like 6 miles or something
Yeah.
like that.
Usually I would do like a base run, a 3 or 4 mile base run earlier in the week. And then kind of mid to end of the week, I would do something between like 5 and 8. And then on the
Yeah.
weekends, it was depending on where I was at in my plan is how many miles I would do. So it would build up
Yep.
about a mile every 2 weeks, I would say.
Cool. And your longest long run for your marathon, how long was that?
So I did a 20-mile run 2 weeks before.
20.
Yeah.
2 weeks before. Okay. Yeah. So like and then you had a 2 week taper between.
Yes. Yeah.
That's solid. And the Hal, this run with Hal, is that the Hal Higdon? Is that Hal Higdon?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I
Yes.
didn't know he had an app. Um,
It's super easy to
okay.
use. I knew
Yeah.
about
Tell us about it.
Hal Hig yeah, I knew about Hal Higdon before. I knew that he had custom plans that you could download and things like that. But I had somebody that I work with actually introduce me to the app, and it's basically all of his training plans that resources that he has online, but in an app that goes day by day. So I think it schedules you 10 days out, and it'll say, and it incorporates different types of runs too, which was really important for me because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I didn't know anything about interval training or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Totally.
So the app just does a great job of saying, okay, these are your runs for the week. This is your long run. You're going to incorporate an interval run here and a tempo. Like, I don't think I actually got into tempo running for my first marathon. I got into
Yeah.
that after, but you would do an interval run here and a base run here and your long run here. So it just made like, especially because I work long hours, I work full time in the office, like just having something already built out for me like that was really important for sure.
Yeah. I hate the gym, and I hate the gym because I don't know what I'm doing when I go to the gym. So when I have enjoyed going to the gym, it's been going to like Orange Theory or the gyms where they tell you what to do and you don't even
Yes.
have to think about it. So I'm the same way. Like yeah, with running, like just give me the program, I'll follow the program.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, convenience is key. I agree with that. Um, Sick. So Run with Hal. And is it free? Is the app
It
free?
is. Yeah. You can pay for the pro
That's good.
version of it. That gives you a little bit more insight. So like
Okay.
it'll take more into account, I guess you could say. So it'll say you track your effort when you log a run on every single one. So if you put, 3 runs in a row of the same type that are you're saying that you're putting in a lot of effort, then the pro version of the app will adjust like for the next time it gives you that training run. It'll give you a little bit more time to finish it or give you a little bit less mileage until you can work up to it. So the free version doesn't adapt as much, but I think for if you're just training for your first marathon, it definitely gets the job done. I don't think you need the pro insights in the beginning.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a fantastic option for getting a training plan and then, yeah, not paying for a coach too, since that's like a whole nother tier of, price, tier
Totally.
price. Anyway, sick. Well, thanks for mentioning that. I think that's important. Like that's a great option for people who are getting into training. Sick. Are there any other notable things that happened in your running journey before your actual marathon day?
So I think that this will probably play more to your audience better, but I accidentally signed up for a trail run when I thought it was just a normal half marathon. I knew it was going to be I knew it wasn't going to be pavement. I wasn't didn't do that little research where where I didn't even know where I was going, but I did not fully see that it was going to be a full on trail in the
Yeah.
middle of December. So it was freezing out here. Like
What?
I think when the race started it was
No.
19 degrees, so it was freezing. And we had to run through a river, which was somebody that's been training
No.
on pavement. I was like, what am I doing here? I do not belong here. So that was interesting. That would have been my third half marathon, and the half marathon I ran a month before I ran my, so I guess it was January, not December, because it was a month before I ran my marathon. But that experience got like it made me a little hesitant to get into trail running, but I also know looking back on it, I didn't have the right shoes. I did not prepare for it. I went into it like I would train for a run on pavement, and it was completely different. So that was probably the only thing that really stood out as notable through that training process was that was that half
Oh
marathon.
my heck. There's no snow, right? There was no
There
snow?
wasn't, no, just freezing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just freezing. Yeah, just freezing.
Yeah, just
Just
19 degrees. No big deal.
19 degrees outside and then like the river. Well, I mean, I
Oh my
guess it would
gosh,
have to
yeah.
be. If it was flowing, it couldn't have been freezing. But freaking cold though. Oh my
It was.
gosh.
Yes.
Was it
Yes.
like was it like a wide river? I mean, I don't know. How wide was this crossing?
Yeah, so they it actually was only supposed to be, it was pretty wide. It like, I mean, it took me a minute to get through it, but when they sent out, we were getting a storm that week. So when they were sending out race updates at the top of the week, they were saying, it should just be up to your ankle. It's not going to be any big deal. So I'm thinking, okay,
Okay.
I'll spray a little bit of, waterproof spray on my shoes and hope for the best and hope that my socks dry pretty quickly. But then we got a little later in the week and the storm had hit and they were like, okay, it's going to be calf deep now. It shouldn't be too bad. I'm thinking calf deep for me. Our definitions of bad are different here, but okay.
Yeah.
And then we got a final race update the day before that was like, okay, it's a little higher than we thought. And that was it. It was so vague. And I was like, oh, awesome. Am I swimming or like what's going on here? So yeah, didn't find out that it was going to be up to my knees until it was in front of me, and I was like, okay, walking through this river, that's up to my knees. I'm pretty sure my pants froze to my legs once I got out of the river and was running again, because they were like really stiff and stuck to me.
And
So
you had pants on. That makes
I
sense because
had
it's
pants.
cold.
Yes, yeah. I was not prepared. I didn't have any winter gear, nothing. Like that was my first trail experience ever. I was like, I either need to get more into this and figure out how to do this for the next time, or I'm never doing this again. Like those were the two options that went through my head.
I have so many follow-up questions. Like, how did your feet do the rest of the time since they got soaked through? That's my first thought and like fear of
Yeah.
ever crossing a river in a race.
Yeah, I mean, I had blisters like crazy. I think I thankfully had
Uh,
the foresight because I knew it was going to be a trail to wear like not my best racing shoes. They were a pair that I had kind of already put a decent amount of miles in. Because I did bleed through those shoes, so I had to throw them out after just from
bleed.
blisters. Yeah,
Holy moly.
But you know what's crazy is I didn't feel it the whole time, right? Because my feet were frozen. So I didn't like, I could see that I was clearly having issues, but I didn't comprehend that I was actually like popping blisters. Sorry if that's nasty to say, but
Oh,
like until after the fact. So it was an experience for sure.
that is crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That is crazy. How are you doing like traction wise? Was this like a single track skinny trail run or is it like a dirt road? And like how did your shoes do? Were they like slipping everywhere or were they like okay, maybe?
Yeah, it was single track, which is also something I wasn't used to from running on pavement. Is like you're kind of you can kind of wiggle around somebody, but you're kind of up to the pace of the person
Yeah,
in front of you, which I was not used to.
yeah, yeah.
Also was super nerve wracking once you got further into the race and everybody started to spread out because it was marked, but it would be marked like every half mile. So you'd be like, I hope
I
I'm still
think
on
I'm
track and I'm
wrong.
not running into the forest in the middle of nowhere. So that was
Yep,
super interesting. Traction wise, it was only really bad traction right on both sides of the river because you had to cross twice. So on
muddy.
both sides, it was pretty muddy. But usually, like, I know the river obviously wasn't the most fun, but by the time I had ran about a mile out of the river, my pants were pretty dry. They weren't sticking to me anymore, and my shoes had kind of like knocked all the mud off. So once you got out of it, it wasn't too bad, but right getting in and getting right out was pretty brutal.
No.
Yeah.
Man, that's a terrible first trail run. They they
I got to
scarred
go back.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no way. That is not how it's supposed to be. Is there a lot of trail running where you are? Are there a lot of trails?
Yeah, there actually is quite a few. There's quite a few
Hmm.
state parks that have run clubs and stuff like that. I think after my second marathon this year, that's something I definitely want to invest in is like a good pair of trail shoes and maybe get involved with one of those groups. I like that they're a little more pace inclusive, which I know is big in the ultra space as well. That it's
Yeah,
okay to walk. You don't. It's not a speed thing. I like that a lot, so I could see myself fitting in with that group.
that is exactly why ultra community is cooler than road racing community.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
no diss. I love that part. Yeah, I love the chillness, chill vibes, especially in the ultra, because like, you know, it's so long, you kind of have to. A lot of people just have to give up the pace thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just did this half marathon yesterday. I did a half marathon yesterday on the trail, and it's still like there's still like pace vibes. Like you still feel like you should be going fast because it's a relatively short distance. I think. Yeah, anyway, interesting how I don't know, like different distances and also like trail versus road can be different vibes that way.
Definitely. Yeah.
Um, okay, well, dang, that is a cool, crazy experience, and that was a month before. And did your feet heal
Yes.
up by the time this marathon came?
Yeah, they did. They did. So
Oh,
I was
thank
pretty much
goodness.
going into I did my half marathon and then that half marathon and then I had a shorter run the next week and then the following week was my 20-mile run and then I was tapering.
Oh,
So my feet actually were fine for the 20-mile run.
really?
Lucky
Oh my
they healed
gosh,
pretty quick in 2 weeks.
that's good.
But then I was in my taper period. So even if it was a little painful for my 20-mile run, I would have had some time to heal before the marathon day.
Okay, good. Good. All right. So, marathon day. Um, maybe first tell us what the race was, what the course was like. I don't know if in this marathon there it even tells you like what the elevation gain and loss maybe was for the marathon, but like what did the course look like?
Yeah, I don't remember the specific elevation change, but I know when I was looking for marathons in North Carolina, I wanted to pick something towards the coast so that I knew it was going to be a bit flatter. So I
Sure.
ended up running the Wilmington Marathon was the race that I signed up for. It was pretty flat. There was a couple of overpasses that we had to run over because it was point to point. So it was you start at
Point
the
to
beach and you
point.
end in downtown. So
Cool.
there were a couple kind of, yeah, like overpass, just like any beach town. If you've ever been to a beach town, there's always like a bridge that gets into the little beach town or the beach city. It was exactly that. So pretty flat.
Nice. Nice. What was the name again of the marathon? Wilmington?
Wilmington. Yep.
Got it. Wilmington. Okay. Um, all right. With that in mind, I think I'm good to set you loose on like what the story was. So like from when you woke up in the morning, like how much sleep you got, how much or what you ate for breakfast, like, the little details like that, the drive over, whatever, till, the start of the race, and then anything notable that happened during the race, moments, thoughts that were going through your head, if you tripped or, any notable moments, whatever, until you reach the finish line. I just want to hear everything you can remember,
Yep.
about it. And then, I'm sorry, this is like a long question, obviously, because it's like, go, here's the story. I also would like to hear what your nutrition like plan was.
Sure.
Maybe at the start of the race, you could tell us what your nutrition plan was for the marathon.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, so
Okay,
the it was like
thanks.
a full like race weekend for the most part, because my like I was saying, I moved from the West Coast, so my parents really wanted to come out and support me for this thing. So they flew in 2 days before, and I had taken a couple days off of work. So the race was on a Sunday, they flew in on a Friday, and it's about a 2.5 hour drive from where we live in Raleigh to Wilmington. So kind of, did a shakeout run that Friday before when my parents got here. Then we drove down that Saturday the day before to go to packet pickup and everything like that. That whole drive, I was a pile of nerves. Like, I felt so bad. My parents flew all the way across the country, and I just like didn't have the words to talk to them that whole drive, because I was just like, I don't know what I'm about to put my body through tomorrow. I just was like trying to center myself, but I was really, really, really nervous. So we got to packet pickup. That didn't help my nerves at all. It's a pretty big race. I think there's 8,000 runners for the Wilmington Marathon. For a local
Whoa,
race, it's pretty big. And that's
whoa.
not just marathon, that's everybody. So it's a marathon, half
Uh,
marathon, and no, I think it's just marathon and half marathon. So
okay.
yeah, so pretty big. So there's a lot of people at packet pickup. There
Yeah.
was people taking pictures of you, like with your when you got your bib, lots of vendors, all that. So we did all that. And then Wilmington, or any beach town really, it's always tricky to navigate anyways. So with road closures and things like that, I was a little worried about my spectator crew, my boyfriend and my parents, being able to figure out where they wanted to go. So that whole first day, we really just spent driving around the course, trying to figure out like what the map that we were provided, like where good places would be for them to stop, because it wasn't like, the New York Marathon or a major or anything like that, where they have dedicated areas for spectators. You're kind of on your own to figure out where you want to stand. So that was nice to be able to map out where they're going to be, where I can expect them to be. I tried to kind of strategically place them at spots where I knew in training I struggled a little bit more, like mileage wise. So like 16, for example, I always struggle at mile 16. So I wanted to make sure that I had somebody there at 16 to give me a little bit of an extra boost. Wanted to make sure I
Nice.
saw somebody before I went to the last 6 miles, because I knew those last 6 miles were uncharted for me. So things like that.
Hmm.
We just kind of mapped out the day before, but I was still freaking out a little bit. I was still pretty nervous that whole time. It's just getting more and more
Yeah.
real, like the more into the day we got. Um, the day before, I was just all I cared about was that I had some sort of protein and some sort of grain and some sort of vegetable. Like that, my stomach
Okay.
is a little sensitive, so
Okay.
I try to stick to foods when I'm eating out, because obviously we didn't bring a lot of food with us.
Yeah.
Is going to be pretty safe. So I think we went to just like a pub ish type restaurant with, I just got like chicken, rice, and a vegetable. It was perfect. The night before. So stuck with that. And then we were staying at a friend's house that lives in Wilmington. So we went and met up with them, got settled in, got all my stuff laid out, did the whole, flat laid out my bib and what I was wearing the next day.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
planned out all my nutrition, made sure, counted probably 10 times that I had the right amount of gels and I knew when I was going to take them and all that. So I got
Well,
everything prepared the night before.
yeah. Why don't you
Um,
tell us now what was the plan, the nutrition plan?
Yeah, so I planned to take something every 30 minutes. Whether it
Okay.
be I had two water bottles. I was packing my pack. I guess I should say that. I trained with
Okay.
my hydration pack on. So
Okay.
I for my first marathon, maybe next time I'll rely on the aid stations a little bit more. But this time I wanted to have everything on me.
Yeah, it does give you that
Yes,
peace of mind. I was the same way.
totally. Yeah, I was like, I'm not gonna. Yeah, God
Was
forbid
it
something happens and I run out of water or something.
yeah, do you have like a Solomon vest with like the two like little hydration pouches or whatever, or what were you sporting?
Yeah, pretty similar. I actually don't remember
Yeah.
the brand. I didn't get anything too crazy for my first one. But
Okay.
just a really simple hydration pack. I took two of those kind of collapsible water bottles with me. So just water in the pack, and then I had two that had element in it, the salt water.
Yeah,
So I had a little bit of
nice.
something to sip on.
Good stuff.
And then I took honey stinger gels, were the gels that I chose for this
Got it.
one. And I just made sure I had enough that I could take something every 30 minutes. So that was really the
Sweet.
strategy. I
Perfect.
didn't end
That's
up sticking
awesome.
to it, which I'll
Yeah,
touch on a little
but
bit
that was
because
the
that was the
plan.
plan. Yes, yes.
Sick. Can I ask too what shoes you choose? What are your chosen shoes for
Yeah,
running?
I really like Brooks for training. I'm a big Brooks
Brooks.
glycerin
Okay.
person, but for race day, I raced in Saucony. I wanted something that was a
Saucony.
little springier, but it could still give me a little bit of good for speed, good for distance. I wanted something kind of in the middle because my Brooks are very cushy and they're definitely for like slower, long periods of time on your feet. So Saucony is what I raced in.
Nice. Cool, cool, cool. Okay. Well, that's the plan. Go ahead. Continue the story.
Yeah. So laid everything out, was feeling
Oh,
good. Yeah.
I actually need to stop you. Sorry. What, in case you weren't going to mention it, what is your goal? Do you have a time
Oh,
goal? Is your goal like, I'm going to finish this thing, or what was the goal?
so I didn't really have a firm one. I knew where I wanted to be
Okay.
around. I knew I wanted to be at around 5 hours. I knew that I could comfortably be there. Either if something happens, maybe I'll be a little over, or if I'm having a good day, I could finish a little under 5. So that was
Sick.
the goal. But I really just wanted to finish. If I finished, I was going to be happy.
Sick. I was the same way. Yeah, like
Yeah.
rough goal. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a starting point. And I actually met up with somebody out on race morning, which maybe I'll get to in a second. But he put a lot of that in perspective for me. But yeah, night before I was just getting everything prepared, over preparing for sure. That helped me. We got to bed early. My boyfriend was there with me. We got everything ready for the morning. I was gonna have to be up around 4 in the morning, so we tried to get to bed as early as we could. It was a 6:30 start, but we had to all be on the beach by 5. So it was an early one. Thankfully no shuttles or anything like that. My boyfriend drove me and dropped me off, which I think helps a lot. Just take some of the
Convenient.
stress off the morning for sure, yeah. But yeah, we got up at 4, breakfast. I just stuck with oatmeal and a banana, nothing too crazy. Um I think I didn't drink anything the morning of. I drank like a liquid IV or something like that the night before, but I tried not to drink too much the day of because I really didn't want to have to use the bathrooms to be honest. So I was like limiting myself that morning. Um, you know those
Porta
lines like
potties are a
before the race
freaking
are a
nightmare.
mess. Yeah,
Like you got to be the first person there or you don't get in sometimes.
I
It's
totally. And I knew
crazy.
I was going to be anxious if I had to sit there and like stand there and wait in line for anything. So I was like, no, I wasn't even going to mess with that. Um, so yeah, I got dropped off. It was beautiful. I got to watch the sunrise on the beach while I was warming up, which was just
Nice.
incredibly. It was a great distraction for the morning. Everybody was out on the beach taking pictures and all that, which was really cool.
Yeah. What was the temperature like?
It was a little chilly, but it actually was perfect that day. It was like for February, probably 50s in the morning.
Oh,
Maybe it was
nice.
like 40, low 40s. So I was wearing like biker shorts and a long sleeve. I was a little chilly wearing that in the morning, but by the time the sun came out, it was perfect.
Yep. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, so the start line was great. I was still really nervous. I was also racing solo, so I didn't have anybody with me. So I was like kind of trying to see, poke around, decide if I wanted to talk to anybody, if I wanted to just kind of keep my headphones in and do my own thing. But this guy ended up coming up to me, and he just needed to borrow my phone. I guess he forgot his or something, needed to text his girlfriend, let him know he was at the start line or something like that. So we just started talking. And he was telling me he was trying to PR his half marathon. So we were talking about like some of the other half marathons that I had ran. And eventually I told him that this was my first marathon. And I told him I was freaking out. I was like, I'm so nervous. I'm shaking. I just want to start this thing. This build up is driving me crazy. And he told me advice that changed the whole day for me. He was just like, he asked me if I had a time goal like you asked me, and I told him, he's like, throw that out the window. Today, no matter what time you get, if you finish this race, you're going to PR today. And that like changed the whole experience for me. I was like, oh, okay, you're right. I like, this is not as big of a deal as I'm making it out to be in my head. And if we cross the finish line today, we did it. It's the time at any of that. It doesn't matter. It's just about getting across the finish line. So I wish I got that guy's number or something, but he changed that morning for me for sure.
Thanks, dude. You will go down in history in this podcast. It's a good guy.
Definitely. Yeah, I
Cool.
hope he hears it one day because he was great. But yeah, we parted ways, got to the start line, and we just started from there. That was basically the morning and the build up.
All right. So now you have started. Um, yeah, walk me through how you're feeling at different mile markers, like just whatever pops to your head. You're like, oh, I remember struggling at this point, or I was feeling super great for this long, and I don't know what do you remember from the race until you cross the finish line?
Yeah. Yeah, so something that was really important for me in the beginning was I don't want to come out too fast. I knew that was
Mm,
like, I had heard it from multiple people. That's the rookie mistake that you make on your first marathon is you come out way too quick, you get excited, like the energy's there, and you just completely kind of like tank in the beginning basically. So I put on the most boring audiobook that I could think of. No music in the beginning. It was like I always come out way too hot if I have good music on. So just put on an audiobook that had we could kind of zone in and out of. I just turned my music or turned the volume way down. I just wanted to kind of like hear what was around me and hear other people running and talking and things like that. So did a good job on staying on pace for the first, I would probably say 8 miles or so. Was feeling great. And then from there, at mile 8, I started to cramp up just a little bit, like enough that I was like,
okay.
this is way too early for me to be feeling
Yeah.
this way. And I hadn't really felt that way through training. So that's
Mm.
where I looked down at my watch and realized it had been way too long since I took fuel. I was like, had this strict
Ah.
plan for every 30 minutes, I'm going to take something, and then got
Yeah.
distracted just in the race
Yep.
environment and everything. And
I
all of a sudden it
know.
was 45 to 50 minutes in and I hadn't taken anything. So, um, that was
You
a
can feel it.
reality check for sure. Yeah, you definitely can. But
Yeah.
that was a reality check. Like I need to be on my game the rest of this because this is mile 8 and I'm feeling like this. I can't feel like this the rest of the race or I'm not going to finish.
Hmm.
So
And
started. Yeah,
can I ask quick, you mentioned like you were on pace. What was this like loose pace you were trying to stick to?
between 11 minutes and 11:30 was what I was trying to be per
Sick.
mile. It was important. It was
Sick.
like, funny because my next marathon, I have goals that I want to push myself into, but this one, I was more worried about pulling myself back. I knew
Yeah,
I could
okay.
run like maybe a 10:30 pace for probably a half marathon distance, maybe a little over, but knew I couldn't hold it for 26. So
Yeah.
I didn't want to be any faster than 11 was what I was trying to keep
Sick.
in mind.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Very
What
lofty
happened?
goals for
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the first
No,
one.
that's awesome. That's sweet, just a loose pace goal. I think that's smart. Like that
Yeah,
guy said, literally cross the finish line, that's the win. So I love it.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so first eight felt pretty good and then got that cramp. From there, yeah, I had the only real hiccup in the beginning besides like the mild cramping, which did end up going away pretty quickly once I was feeling properly, but I had a bathroom break around like mile 10. And I only bring this up because if you're volunteering at a race, don't get in the bathroom before the racers because that set me back like 5 minutes. Somebody that was a volunteer that wasn't even racing like happened to use the porta potty that was there in front of me, and that was really frustrating because I was just standing in line like, come on, hurry up! I'm wasting so much time.
Dang, that
Um,
stinks. That's quite a while.
so yeah, it was a long time. So that was like, it wasn't just frustrating because it was a volunteer. It also, I got really cold and it's really hard
Yep.
at like mile 10, 11 to stop and then start again. So I was feeling like I don't know. It just, I felt like I was, like I had ran a lot more miles than I had ran because I had stopped, everything cooled down, and then I was really slow to get back going. So from like 10 to 13, I was just struggling a bit from slowing down and coming to a complete stop. So that was interesting. And then 13, I feel like a lot of people can relate to seeing the half marathoners go off and finish
Oh,
their race. And then you
dang.
realize, and it sets in that you're only halfway there. So that was mentally hard. That was probably the hardest mental challenge. Everything else up until then was all physical. But once I saw the half marathoners split off from me, I was like, oh, okay.
Dang.
This is a thing that I'm doing here. I don't think it had set in until that point. I don't know if you can relate to that too with ultras. If there's any point where you sit in and realize like, oh man, I've got a long ways to go here.
Well, like I actually haven't told you. I haven't run my first ultra yet. My first ultra is
Mm,
in August. So I built this podcast as like a way to like give myself yeah, stories to inspire me to get there, right? And
cool.
others. But with my marathon though, yeah, the mine was point to point as well, and the half marathon started 13 point whatever mile,
Oh, so they
13.1 miles,
finished with you.
and they finished with me, but they started at the halfway point. So yeah, so I'm running, and then I see where the half marathon starts, and I'm like, oh, okay, here we go, just
Yeah.
another half to go.
Yeah, it is
Yep.
brutal. Like I said, it's just a mind thing. It really messed with
Yeah.
me for probably 13 to probably 15. All I could think about was there is so much of this race left. Like don't conserve your energy. Don't do anything crazy because there is a lot of this that we have to get through. Um, and then 16 rolls around. I always struggle at 16. I think I said that before. I always struggle with from 16 to probably 18 is always where I struggled in training for some reason. Um, it's
In
where
what way? Yeah.
it kind of feels like hitting the wall a little bit.
Okay.
I mentally it's hard for me. It's physically I was starting to feel a little fatigue in my like my knees and in my hips and things like that.
Yeah.
It's also usually where I start to feel a little bit of tightness, like in my back and things like that, where I feel like I need to stretch out.
Yeah.
Which I learned later that it's better to just keep moving than to stop and let your body cool down and
Stretch.
stretch out and things like
Hmm.
that. But
Interesting.
um, that's around where I usually struggle a little bit. So, but I did see my family there, like we planned. They were around mile
Yay.
16. That is, I can't talk about the spectators enough. Having them there was just it's so helpful. You see everybody around you, seeing their families and everything, and you're like, oh, where's my crew? And then you finally see them, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, there they are. I know I'm getting close. So that was just huge. But I was really struggling from probably 16 to 18. um 18 to 23, 24 was hard only because you have to run around a lake. So you pass the finish line obviously at 13 and then you start heading towards this lake and you have to loop around this lake and then come back to the finish line. So that was hard because I had already ran through downtown Wilmington and I had to go away from it again and then circle back around and come back. So I think that was just mentally hard because I knew I was moving away from the finish line for a good bit of that. So mentally, I'm like, the further I run out here, the further I'm gonna have to run back to this freaking finish line. It was just messing with me a little bit. Physically,
That
I was still in
messed
the
with
same
me
spot,
too.
but did it?
Sorry,
Yeah,
that same thing in my marathon. It went away and then back towards the finish line. I was like, why
yeah,
is it doing this? This is terrible. Okay,
exactly. Yeah,
carry
it
carry
it
on.
really messes with you. No, I think it's a good point. It's like, yeah, your mind is like, this seems counterproductive. we're moving away from where we're trying to get to,
Yeah,
but yeah, everything from there was pretty decent. I think I started to really hit the wall and really feel it around like 23 to 26, where I realized I still had a
mm,
5K left. That was when my back was really tight. I was doing quite a bit. I was mostly running up until that point, and I was doing quite a bit of walk run from 23 to 26. Um, there was not a lot of spectators during that point. That's kind of where we were coming back from the lake. Um, Once you hit 24, the spectators start to trickle back in, and then once you're at 25, like the last mile, they're all there. But before
yeah,
that, yeah,
okay.
they were kind of few and far between, just not really
Well,
out
that's
by the lake
hard.
we ran to. Really hard, yeah. You kind of you're out there by yourself. It's a long time
Yeah,
to be with yourself and listen to your own thoughts. So, um, yeah, and then finish line. It was a really cool feeling. It was a little more numb than I expected. I was just exhausted and ready to go eat and lay down, but just tried to take it all in, you know, tried to take out my headphones and listen to the crowd, listen to them say my name, all that. So yeah, it was overall a pretty standard experience, but it was pretty cool.
So in your head, like mentally and emotionally, and then physically, how did you feel when you crossed the finish line? Like, was it just the exhaustion, or like what was going through your head?
Yeah, I fully expected myself to cry. I expected myself to
Yeah,
be super emotional because I was emotional thinking about the finish line when I was training for it. I just
yeah,
knew it was like a big hump that I was getting over this marathon. But when it was actually happening, it happened way quicker than
yeah,
I could probably wrap my head around. I feel like a lot of people I've spoken to have kind of said something similar, that doesn't really
yeah,
hit you until a little bit later, but you expect the finish line to hit you really hard.
yeah,
I was just a little numb to it right when I crossed. Just like wanted to get my medal, wanted to go see my family, get some pictures, sit down, and leave. It wasn't until I got back to the place that we were staying where it really hit me, and then the emotions were there, and I was like, okay, I really did this thing. And like once I could sit with it for a second.
hmm. Well, thanks for sharing that. I ask everyone on the podcast how they feel when they cross the finish line, and it hits everyone different. Sometimes it is that glorious moment, and
Yeah.
so far in my experience, it has not been. So that's why I like to talk to people about it, because yeah, same with me. When I crossed the finish line of the marathon, I was freaking exhausted and I just wanted to sit down, and I did not feel any glorious like emotions in the moment.
Yeah.
Of course I'm proud of myself, but it was like, yeah, numb. I like that. That's a good way of saying it, because you just did something extremely difficult. So
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
okay. It makes sense. So don't think you're weird, anybody listening, if you do cross the finish line and you don't get that glorious feeling, because yeah, it just like it hits different based on like a lot of different factors, I think. Like how
Yes.
destroyed you are, even how difficult it was. Like if I've noticed people who say they went through like the pain cave multiple times, or like they did, it was just so hard and they crossed. Sometimes I feel like that can be an influence. Like if it was really, really difficult, I don't know. It's weird what can make that glorious moment happen or not. But either way, you've done
Yeah.
something fantastic.
Totally. Yeah.
Um, cool. So you reached the finish line, and like physically, how's your body doing? Are you like cramping and dying, or pretty all right? I don't know.
Yeah, I was cramping a decent amount after. It was mostly when I got back to the room, or back to where we were staying, where like if I would lay down in a weird way, I would cramp up pretty bad. That's one of my goals for the next one. Is I feel, oh, I guess I didn't even mention this for fueling, but my fueling strategy just completely went out the window at the end because I just couldn't. My stomach
Huh.
was not. I
Oh,
couldn't take in any more gels. Like I every time I would try to take in
really?
something, I was super nauseous. So I was relying solely
Oh,
on the element, like salt, and just making sure I was drinking that for probably the
dang.
last eight
And there's
miles
no
or so, like
sugar.
a lot of it. No. So
Yeah. So,
so at the end, I was just like done. I next time around, I'm gonna make sure that I do a little bit more testing on the long runs, for fuel, and make sure I have a good option for if I get sick, and of the fueling options that I start with, having like a backup plan, if I can't take in
yeah.
anything at the end. So
Thanks
yeah.
for mentioning that. That's oh, no sugar
Yeah.
for the last 8 miles. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that would be hard. You
Yeah,
would
it was
not have
brutal.
energy, so that makes sense. Um, did you go out to eat afterwards, like immediately afterwards?
My parents were kind enough, because I was down bad for a couple hours. So my parents were kind enough to
Okay.
bring me a lunch like to the
Uh,
house. And then once I ate and took like a good nap, then we were able to go. We were able to go out
Nap.
to dinner after, and I was okay. I was feeling a little better than I expected. Like my body was dead, but my mind, after I'd kind of been able to rest for a little bit, was I was doing okay.
Back with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I took a nap yesterday too after the half. I was like, I just need this right now. Yeah, naps are good.
It's a good time for a post race nap. I'm a big proponent of for sure.
Yeah, it felt so good. Um, that's awesome, Taylor. Well, good for you. And congratulations. And then, do you know what time did you get? How did you go? And you're on your rough goal. Just curious.
Yeah, I was pretty close. I think I was a little over 5. So I was right around there. The
Really?
next time around, I
Let's
would love to
go.
be under 5 because I think I know what I could have done different to get under 5. But for the first one, like that guy said, wasn't trying to do anything crazy, so I was happy with it.
Man, good for you. Good for you.
Yeah.
Um, well, how long did it take for you to wait until you signed up for your next marathon?
So I was already thinking, like I had kind of already had a few podcast guests in mind because the podcast was something I was already thinking about. So just in talking to other people who had ran multiple marathons and talked about what cycles of training they go through and things like that, I was like, I can totally do a second one this year. I can sign up for one in like October or November, take some time off, do some work on my base training, do some work in the gym, that kind of thing through my off season, and then really hit it hard in kind of July to run something at the end of the year. So I wasn't signed up right away, but I knew if what
But
I
you
was going to
knew.
find one at the end of the year.
Yeah, and you are signed up for one
Yeah,
at this point, right?
I
Yeah.
am. Yep.
And what is that marathon?
So originally, I was really hoping to pull the lottery for New York this year, but I didn't end up
Hmm.
getting in. So it just so happens that our big local marathon in Raleigh is also November 3rd, the same day as New York. So I'm going to run the City of Oaks Marathon in Raleigh.
That's awesome. Man, good for you. That's awesome that your journey is going to continue here onto another marathon, and it's so cool that you have this podcast that is like so similar to this in helping people
Yeah.
get to their first marathon by hearing the stories of other, normal people who have run their first marathon. Um, yeah, I'd love to have, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about your podcast, that like different types of people that you have on there, and then like what does the flow of your podcast look like? What are you asking the people that come on, and what's the purpose? What's the goal? Just tell us about the podcast.
Yeah, sure. So first thing I'll say is Brendan's actually coming on my podcast a little bit later in the
Woohoo!
year, so stay tuned for that. It should be around August when that episode comes out. But yeah, it's a really similar format. I was really when I started posting about kind of my journey online, because that's not something I mentioned in the beginning, but I've had this Instagram that I've been posting on for me personally since day one. I don't know how I had that foresight to do it, but the first day I went on a run, I started that Instagram. I just wanted to kind of track progress for myself. And
Ah,
through that Instagram, I ended up meeting a ton of people, which are people that I've met in real life now, which is great. Like I said, I moved out here by myself, so a lot of the people I've met have been through social media, that I go run with and hang out with today. So it's been pretty cool to get involved with the world on social media. So from there, like there were a lot of
awesome.
people that, if you follow other running accounts, they post their race recaps and they post about their marathon journeys and they do all this online anyways. So I was just thinking it would be great to, and I also listen to a lot of podcasts when I run. So I'm thinking it would be great to
Yeah,
be able to hear people's stories while I'm training for this thing. And also all of the doubt that I was experiencing in the beginning of, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I fit in here. I feel like a lot of that would have been alleviated if I had something like a resource to go listen to people who are similar to myself, not like not that there's anything wrong with being an elite or a master runner. Those people are all super dope,
totally.
but probably not the most relatable for some of us kind of everyday runners. So the podcast idea is just to interview anybody. If you've ran, a marathon, or if you've ran 100 marathons, talk about your story and talk about kind of the similarities and differences between everybody's individual stories.
I love it. Yeah, it's so similar, so cool.
Yeah.
Um, that you're doing that. Yeah, it is inspiring. It's so fun to meet so many different people who are on a similar path and connect with them and share their stories. You make sweet connections, and I don't know, have you had people reach out and tell you that they found the podcast to be helpful?
Yeah. I had somebody on yesterday actually. I interviewed her. She just ran her first marathon and she's training for her second. So we're at a pretty
Oh,
similar spot in
wow.
our journey. And she was saying, which is the one of the first times someone said this. I'm only 18, 19 episodes in, but she's
Yeah,
like, "Hey, I signed up for my first marathon because of the podcast," and I was like, "Oh, that's so cool." So it is cool to see people, take it serious and have it have an impact for sure.
that's so cool. So cool, Taylor. Um, I will for sure share your podcast in the show notes. My first marathon, it'll be in the show notes. We could just look it up right now. My first marathon. Taylor, how do I say your last name? Sayles?
Sales. Yep, you got it.
Ah, and you do sales. That's punny. Okay. Anyway,
Yep.
um,
Destiny.
that's great. My first marathon. And if any of y'all have run your first marathon, do you usually only interview people who run one recently, or is it
No, could be anybody. Yeah,
ever?
I'm booking a little bit far out right now, but if you want to, I have a form in my bio. If you link the Instagram, there's a form in that bio. Always
Yep.
feel free to submit a request, and I go through them and send out Calendly links when I get a little bit closer. So, would love to hear anybody's story for sure.
Well, yeah. Consider that if you run your first marathon, you could share your story on a podcast. And Taylor, just thanks again for being here, for sharing your
Yeah,
story to your first marathon. It's a huge accomplishment, and just anyone listening know that you can do the same thing. Um, go out there, just set the goal to do it, like Taylor did. Just do it. Set a loose time goal, try to push yourself a little bit, but not too hard, and hopefully we'll this will be a big step on your journey towards your first ultra marathon if that's something that you listeners are looking to do, your first 50K or first 50 miler. This is a perfect step to help build your confidence in your ability to do it. I ran my first marathon in January, and the minute I ran that marathon, I knew that I could do a 50K because it's literally just 5 more miles. Like I could
yeah.
do 5 more miles. So yeah, those steps can really help build that confidence. So anyway, thanks again, Taylor, and thanks again everyone for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Cool. Thank you for having me.
Hey, your host Brendan here. I just wanted to thank you personally for listening to today's episode. As someone preparing for my own first ultra marathon, I've found these conversations to be super valuable, and I hope they are for you as well. Whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or somewhere else, make sure to follow or subscribe so you know when the next episode comes out. Also, make sure you check out the show notes of this episode. There's a link to sign up for the Ordinary to Ultra email newsletter, to join our Facebook and Strava groups where you can meet other people striving to run their first ultra marathon, and see any links that our guests may have provided as well. Thanks again, and we'll catch you in the next episode.